This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. The World Health Organization calls an emergency meeting as Ugandan officials record more Ebola cases. We'll have the latest.
We fear Ebola a lot. It has crossed from Congo to Uganda.
4 East African countries announced their spending plans for the next year. The big question, how to raise more money for government spending. Kidnappings are on the rise in Nigeria. The BBC investigates how some successful footballers have become targets. Also in the program, fitness mania is catching up. How music has inspired this 63-year-old to go from obese to obsessed about helping others to lose weight.
My goal is not to help people from here only. I want to help people the whole world.
And in sports, can South Africa's Banyana get their first ever victory at a Women's World Cup when they take on China in Paris later tonight? Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The World Health Organization has called an emergency meeting to discuss its response to the Ebola outbreak. Uganda, 2 people have now died in the country. Meanwhile, 1 patient and 4 members of his family were repatriated to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where this latest epidemic started. Well, the BBC's Dia Journey sent this update from Uganda's capital, Kampala.
An estimated 5,000 people pass through this border point between Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo daily. As Uganda moves to contain an outbreak of Ebola that so far claims 2, the screening of persons here, as well as other border points in the country, is now a top priority.
Me personally, I fear Ebola a lot because it has finished us here at the border. We as motor taxi drivers are asking to receive help like protective gear so that we can drive safely. We fear Ebola a lot. It has crossed from Congo to Uganda.
Today, the Ugandan government also moved to repatriate 5 people to the Democratic Republic of Congo, including the parents of a 5-year-old boy who was the first to be confirmed with Ebola on Tuesday, and his 3-year-old brother who is also infected with the virus. Those infected reportedly came into contact with an ailing grandfather in the DRC. On the streets of the capital, news of the outbreak of Ebola in the border districts of Kasese is mixed.
We are worried, but we hope that the government will contain the situation, because it's not the first time the government containing the same Ebola in the same country.
I think the government should consider more about Ebola and its spread in our budget, which is being read today, and put more health facilities and consideration that Ebola is in Uganda now.
Tomorrow, the government will begin an Ebola vaccination exercise targeting people who got into contact with the suspected cases and health workers. Meanwhile, the WHO will hold an emergency meeting to discuss whether the Ebola outbreak in the DRC, which has now spread to Uganda, should be declared a public health emergency of international concern. Currently, 22 districts in Uganda are considered at risk of an Ebola outbreak. The WHO has previously warned the virus could spread from the Democratic Republic of Congo to Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan. Dia Jean, BBC News, Kampala.
Well, Sudan's state prosecutors say they've charged the former president Omar al-Bashir with corruption, according to state media. And the former leader is reportedly facing charges of possessing of foreign funds, acquiring illegal wealth, and ordering the state of emergency. Now, this comes as support for mediation efforts was stepped up with the introduction of an international team. Currently, the African Union is helping to try to resume talks that collapsed between protesters and generals after the violent dispersal of a sit-in protest last Monday.
I can say without too much optimism that the discussions that we're holding on each side separately are moving forward to a great extent.
Let's now take a quick look at other stories making headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. 2 oil tankers have been hit by explosions in suspected attacks close to Iran in the Gulf of Oman, one of the world's busiest oil export routes. 44 crew members have been rescued from the vessels, one of which is Norwegian-owned, the other Japanese-owned. Now, the exact cause of the explosions is not yet known. The Democratic Republic of Congo's Constitutional Court has disqualified 23 opposition MPs who were elected in December. In total, 33 MPs were invalidated by the court, but the reason has not been disclosed. Now, text messaging services in Ethiopia have been shut down as the country experiences its 3rd day in a row with temporary breaks in online access. It coincides with nationwide exams, and there's been speculation that the blackout is aimed at trying to stop people cheating, but this has not been confirmed by the authorities. Now, the finance ministers from 4 East African countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania and Rwanda, have announced how they plan to spend in the next year. Now, the big theme across all the countries is how to raise more money for government spending. Now, Kenya is by far the biggest spender in the region, but it also has a huge deficit. Now, with me in studio is Larry Mado, our business editor. Thanks for taking time to talk to us, Larry. Kenyans are particularly concerned, even after this budget has been read.
They're concerned, Sophie, about the size of the deficit. 600 billion shillings is about $600 million out of about $29 billion, the size of the budget. However, when you think about the debt that Kenya has, it's just over $50 billion. A lot of that has been borrowed in the years that President Uhuru Kenyatta has been in power. And Kenyans worry that the country is taking on much more debt than it can handle. At the same time, I've been speaking to some economists, and one of them tells me the deficit is not the problem. The bigger problem is spending, and the government is spending much more than it can afford. That's a bigger issue. The third one is corruption. Way too much money is getting stolen by government officials, by entrepreneurs, people who know the right people in government will get tenders and often supply nothing. They don't build roads, they don't give hospitals, all of that. And those are the major issues around the budget.
So how are they going to raise money?
So that's the thing about raising money. It's not just in Kenya, but also in Tanzania, in Uganda. In Uganda, for instance, they're going to spend almost a quarter of the budget in paying off some of that debt. What they need to do, according to many of the economists who watch East African budgets, is not tax more, but tax better. They need to find better ways to make sure that you're not having loopholes that people evade taxes. And on the other hand, if you introduce too many taxes, then you lock out a lot of people. You're not spurring economic growth. It's not an easy thing. It's easier said than done.
All right, let's look at it regionally now, because Kenya introduced a new currency recently, and we are seeing some level of cooperation among the East African countries, the central banks there. Why is this so important?
So the new currency has some interesting difference. This is what the new currency looks like, by the way. I'm not sure I can give it to you. Okay. And the reason why Kenya is doing this, the big headline has been the demonetization of the 1,000 shilling note. This is about $10 worth, and it is for people who get their money through illicit means, through corruption, through kickbacks and that sort of thing. They have kept it in cash under the mattress. By October, you have to give it back to the central bank or the commercial banks and then get the new currency. So it's supposed to lock out a lot of people who have millions of dollars held in bank account, held in their mattresses. And the other East African countries, most notably Tanzania and Uganda, are cooperating, Rwanda as well, and saying you cannot exchange any Kenyan currency. So because the avenues are locked in Kenya, the region as a whole is saying we will not allow you to do so because the Kenya shilling is seen as the dollar of the region.
All right. So the 4 countries have presented their budgets. They look traditionally as united as anyone would like to see them, but are they as one geopolitically?
They are not as one. In fact, there are some regional rifts. There's this union called the Coalition of the Willing. Kenya, Uganda and Rwanda. They seem to be much more interested in the East African community than Tanzania. In fact, Tanzania is also a member of SADC, the Southern African regional bloc. And President Magufuli will be becoming chair of SADC in August when they meet in Tanzania. At the same time, Uganda and Rwanda have had a lot of tussles, which is still going on. There's this disagreement that has led to a closure of the Gatuna border post, and that's still not resolved. Tanzania and Kenya also have their issues. Kenyan businesses struggle to do business in Tanzania. Kenyan professionals struggle to find work permits. So even though they have this tradition of reading all their budgets together, the rifts really are just under the surface.
All right, Larry Mado, thank you. Well, just before we move on from our budget story, we just want to bring you this picture of MP Fatuma Gedi taken outside Kenya's budget presentation. She sits on the budget committee and she's accusing her colleague Rashid Kassim of slapping her in the face for not allocating money to his constituency. Now, her fellow female MPs walked out of Parliament in protest. Mr. Kassim has been arrested. The subject of bride price or dowry is one that generates interesting and sometimes hilarious discussions. Now, with the excessive demands that come with it, some African communities have come up with different initiatives to raise dowry. The BBC's Eunice Gatonye reports.
It's afternoon in the eastern province of Rwanda, and Donada Mungwaneza, alongside other members of Tuyubake Association, are making their way to their monthly meeting. Today is an important day for her. She has requested for the association to help her raise money for her bride price.
The dowry ceremony is the most important and difficult one. My parents have requested a dowry of $660 from my fiancé. I will definitely make my own contribution because I love him, and our parents, relatives, and friends must be proud of us. I decided to support my fiancé by paying $220, and he will contribute the rest, which is $440.
The association, like others across Rwanda, allows members who want to take the next step into marriage to borrow cash and pay dowry to meet the culture demands.
When a member is planning a wedding, he informs colleagues. They meet and raise funds, whatever you can afford, starting from $2. When one is a member of more than one association, he gains more support since it's an obligation for every member to contribute to his wedding.
According to the Rwandan culture, the dowry is seen as a blessing to the in-laws for the efforts to have raised a first-class girl. And this is why it's important to preserve this culture.
For this community, the financial support is not only a way to ensure its members respect culture, but also preserve the culture that has been passed down many generations.
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, we reveal why President Ahmad of the Confederation of African Football was questioned by corruption investigators in Paris last week. That's in sport. I'm Sophie Ikenye and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top story on this program: the World Health Organization has called an emergency meeting to discuss its response to the Ebola outbreak in Uganda. 2 people have now died in the country. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport. Peter.
Many thanks, Sophie. And we begin with the ongoing Women's World Cup in France, where the action moves to Group B this evening, with South Africa taking on China, while Australia faced Brazil earlier on today. Our reporter at the tournament is Mimi Fawaz, and she joins me now from Paris. Mimi, can Nigeria's first win in the competition yesterday inspire Banyana to their first victory as well?
Well, Peter, we're here at the Parc des Princes with lots of South African football fans, and they are confident that Nigeria win can spark another win for Africa here in France. You confident they can bounce back?
Absolutely. Our calls are brave. We're ready for China. We're going to beat them.
And for you, Tebi Ketlana was the star player in that match against Spain. You expect her to score another goal?
Yes, of course. We're here for a kill today. We're going to kill China.
Yes, we are going for a kill today. We were so unfortunate to lose the game, the first game, but believe me, if we qualify, if we beat China today and beat Germany, we'll be through.
All right, well, we know that South African football fans, the celebrations, everybody's been buzzing about the celebrations on social media. Come on, guys, show us what you're doing.
Mimi Fawaz having too much fun there in Paris with those South African fans. And that match just kicks off in over an hour in Paris. Now, Now, cast your minds back to last week when the Confederation of African Football President Ahmad, who goes by just the one name, was questioned by corruption investigators in Paris before being released without charge. At the time, few details were publicly available, but now a joint investigation by BBC Sports Africa and Norway's Josima magazine can reveal some of the background which led to the incident. Piers Edwards from BBC Sports Africa joins me now from our newsroom. Piers, so what were they questioning Ahmad about?
Well, high on their list would have been a company that Ahmad introduced to the Confederation of African Football in December 2017. That was the very year that he became president of CAF. The company is based in France. It's called Tactical Steel, and it's traditionally specialised in the manufacture and supply of gym equipment. Nonetheless, in December 2017, it was appointed by CAF to provide footballs and football equipment for the forthcoming African Nations Championship. And the deal was notable for two main reasons. One, CAF already had a deal in place with a rival sportswear manufacturer, Puma, costing around $250,000. But CAF said that it didn't want to use goods from Puma, so it went to a different sportswear manufacturer. That's the one it wanted to use, and when it couldn't find goods for that manufacturer, well, it appointed Tactical Steel instead. And secondly, even though the BBC understands that the Tactical Steel was 1.5 times larger, the actual cost of the deal was 4 times as great. Once again, CAF, in a statement, said that this was because the deal didn't just cover the African Nations Championship and that the equipment ordered was different too.
Okay, and just very briefly, Piers, what happens next?
What happens next? Well, FIFA are looking into the matter, we understand, as into Tactical Steel. I should just tell you, Peter, before I go, that the link between Tactical Steel and CAF is that CAF President Ahmad's aide is Loïc Giron, a man called Loïc Giron. And Loïc Giron is a very old friend of Romuald Cellier, who owns Tactical Steel. They even served in the army together for 5 years. And I should just end by saying that Ahmad has told the BBC in a statement that there is absolutely no conflict of interest for his organisation. And nor, should we add, is there any suggestion that either Mr. Ahmad, Mr. Cellier or Mr. Giron have personally profited from the deal in any way.
Piers Edwards there, thank you very much. Now, very quickly, we spoke about the South African women at the World Cup earlier in the program. Well, ahead of their match tonight, they were given a morale-boosting visit by none other than 800 meters Olympic champion Caster Semenya. Semenya, who had lunch with the players, had said she was there to be an inspiration to Banyana Banyana. Now, Premier League side Southampton FC says it has reached an agreement to sign the highly rated young Malian winger Moussa Djenepo from Standard Liège. The 20-year-old has agreed a 4-year contract at St. Mary's. Djenepo scored 11 times for Standard Liège as he helped them to a third-place finish in the Belgian top flight and qualification for the Europa League. He's currently training with Mali's Nations Cup squad. And Zimbabwe international Marshal Munetsi says joining French club Reims was an easy choice and adds he's excited about the challenge of playing in Europe. The 22-year-old signed a 4-year deal with the League One side from South African giants Orlando. The 2019 Africa Cup of Nations bound star says he was impressed by the ambition and facilities at Reims. Mimi's having too much fun.
I was about to tell you that she's having a lot of fun. Yeah, looking forward to that match, by the way.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for the sport, Peter. Thank you. Now, kidnapping for ransom in Nigeria has long been a problem, but it's now spreading countrywide. Nearly 700 people from all walks of life were kidnapped in the first 3 months of this year. Now, footballers have also been targeted through their families, and they end up paying tens of thousands of dollars in ransom. The BBC's Adebola Adebanjo reports.
Fame, money, adulation. For Nigeria's top footballers, the rewards can be great, but success also has a darker side. With kidnapping on the rise in Nigeria, players and their families are becoming targets.
I thought my dad was going to be shot because they said they will.
National team captain John Obi Mikel knows all about it. His father has been kidnapped twice. The second time was while he was away playing at last year's World Cup in Russia.
Because of what I do, playing football and try to put a smile on people's faces and try to represent the country and try to make the country proud, I'm paying the price for it.
In the first 3 months of this year, nearly 700 people were kidnapped in Nigeria. If that trend continues, the total figure will be more than double what it was 2 years ago.
Among those kidnapped last year was the mother of Samuel Kalu, one of the younger members of Ghana Roa's Nigeria squad. Kalu plays in France with Bordeaux, where Roa also lives.
Kalu, he was crying all the time. He was not sleeping for 1 week.
Kalu's mother was released 6 days after being abducted by gunmen. Families do end up paying a ransom when a loved one is kidnapped, dealing direct with the criminals. But that goes against the official advice from police.
If you keep the police away and you keep on negotiating, they'll get free cash and go, and still come back again to continue with it. We are facing it head on, and we are winning the war.
That's not a view shared by everyone, including those who have made it their job to protect high-profile figures from the threat of kidnapping.
Public figure, celebrities, footballers, that visibility you have, that money you're making that is blurred all over the news comes with a lot of implications and responsibilities. Most people, even with police involvement, end up paying ransoms.
As with last year's World Cup, Nigeria's national team, nicknamed the Super Eagles, will be away from home again in June and July, playing at the Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt. Players are looking at ways to keep their families safe.
We have always considered the security of those patriotic Nigerians who are representing our country in sports. We have a unit of the MPF at the force headquarters that is responsible for sports.
The BBC has tried to find out how many people work for that department, but has so far been unable to get an answer.
The kidnap attempts are becoming bolder, the ransom figures are becoming higher, and it is becoming, I want to say, a national embarrassment.
Nigeria will be among the favorites when the Cup of Nations kicks off on the 21st of June. Victory on the pitch is important, but the safety of family members back home must be the ultimate goal.
Well, let's move to South Africa and meet one woman whose mission is to inspire her community to get fit. Catherine Matebe was so big that she could not walk without her crutches, but one day she heard a song on the radio and tried to dance. Take a look.
Exercise saved my life. My name is Catherine Matebe. I am 63 years old. This is Bupilong Fitness Club. I am an instructor, I'm the founder. Believe it or not, I used to weigh 150 kilograms. I was suffering from high blood pressure and arthritis. One day, I heard the song on the radio and I decided to stand up and try to move my body. That day, my life changed. Exercise changed my life. You can see me now. My goal is not to help people from here only. I want to help people the whole world.
Well, before we go, a quick look at a top story today on Focus on Africa. The World Health Organization has called an emergency meeting to discuss its response to the Ebola outbreak in Uganda. Now, 2 people have now died in the country. Meanwhile, 1 patient and 4 members of his family were repatriated to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where this latest epidemic started. Now, they are the first cases reported there since the virus spread over the border from the DRC, where nearly 1,400 people have died. Now, the head of a major medical charity has called the latest outbreak of Ebola in Central Africa truly frightening. Don't forget you can get in touch with me and the rest of the team on Twitter. I'm @Sikenye. That's Focus on Africa for now. Thanks for your company.